Yes, you have read the title correctly. I have in fact given up any hopes of originality and decided to do this video just purely because I saw everybody else doing it. I've also just returned to Scotland after going home for Christmas, so my energy levels and ability to film complete video essays kind of low right now. They will come back soon, I promise. But for right now, we're going to film the 25 books I want to read in 2025. It's gonna be fun, it's gonna be cute, it's a little sit down, it's a little gossip, it's a little catch up kind of thing. This is January content at its finest for me. We're setting goals for the new year. Now, this video is kind of going to be in two parts. We have one half of this list that is about books that are coming out this year. That's going to be our first part. And then the second part is just books that have been on my TBR forever that I really, really want to get to, and or books that are new on my TBR but like I really, really want to get to. Essentially, the theme is these are books I really, really want to get to, and this video is a way of holding myself accountable because we'll come back at the end of the year and look at like what did I read, what didn't I read, give little reviews, all of that stuff. I'm setting up content now that I can then do at the end of the year. Work smarter, not harder, everyone. Work smarter, not harder. And little disclaimer, obviously, I have not yet read these books at time of filming. So I will try and give you a little summary of what I know the book's about, whether that's plot or just like themes, characters, blah, blah, blah. But if I'm wrong or it's quite vague, don't hold it against me because like I said, not read them. With all that being said, let's get into it. Obviously, we're going to start with the new releases this year, and I'm just going to do them in chronological order of release date for ease. So book number one is The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, and this came out on the 7th of January. So at time of filming, this has already come out. Now, this is a memoir by Sherry Frankie, who is the eldest daughter of Ruby Frankie, an online personality known for the family vlogging channel 8 Passengers, and who in 2023 was arrested for child abuse, and she's since pled guilty and been sentenced. So this memoir, I believe, is Sherry Frankie's opportunity to use her voice and expose the truth behind the YouTube channel that millions viewed these videos of her as a child and her siblings, but also the upbringing that she experienced behind closed doors that nobody else saw. I think she also speculates on her mother's upbringing slightly and how her mother was kind of forged to be. And this is Sherry Frankie's kind of goodbye to a public life, I believe. She's written this memoir. She announced she's engaged, I believe. Congratulations. And this is her farewell to public life after kind of telling her truth, setting the narrative straight by someone who was exploited for a narrative by her mother and whose private life has kind of been openly exposed by the media. I'm really interested to delve deeper into this one. I haven't followed the Ruby Frankie case really closely, but I have heard bits and pieces, and I feel this is a good source to get the information from, straight from someone who's part of experiencing what actually happened. I also think this may be the start of us seeing those children of influencers, those kind of first children of influencers that were exploited online, coming out and telling their stories, which will be a very interesting point in kind of popular culture and social discourse. Book number two is The Three Lives of Kate K by Kate Fagan, and this came out on the 9th of Jan. Again, this one is already out by the time I'm filming. From what I can gather, Kate K is a famous novelist, but Kate K is only one of 3 different names the novelist herself has ever gone by. Throughout the book, I believe we explore these 3 names and the lives attached to them and how they all go back to the same person, what's led this person to change their names these different times and take up aliases. From what I know, this one also has queer rep, although I don't know what specific representation or to what extent that's part of the storyline because I haven't read it yet, but I'm very interested to see how this one comes to fruition. Book number 3 is The Favourites by Lane Fargo, which comes out on the 16th of January. When you're watching this, it probably is out already. So this is all about ice skaters, this pair of ice dancers who 10 years ago their partnership broke up after an incident at the Olympics. And the book is set 10 years later, I believe, when a tell-all documentary is about to come out, and it's about trying to unravel what happened and setting the record straight and understanding how this relationship broke up. The feeling I'm getting from it is Daisy Jones and the Six meets Spinning Out, which I'm very excited for because I love both of those pieces of media. Book number 4 is The Loves of My Life by Edmund White, out January 28th. Edmund White is a really influential voice in the literary canon in terms of queer literature and is probably most well known for A Boy's Own Story. So this memoir touches on White's sexual partners and relationships across decades which have influenced his work, whilst also providing a window into queer history. Book number 5, we have Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I believe this comes out the 4th of Feb. I am one of the few people in this world, and particularly of those who make content, that have never read an Ali Hazelwood book. This one is probably the one that sounds the most interesting to me of the synopses that I have read. This is a sports romance set in college. You have a diver and a swimmer. That's about all the information I know, but that information alone is enough to have me intrigued. Book number 6 is Saving Five by Amanda Nguyen, out the 4th of March. So this is Amanda Nguyen's memoir. Those of you who don't know who Amanda Nguyen is, she lobbied Congress in a truly bipartisan effort to pass the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights. And then after that, she went and lobbied the UN for a similar bill. And her story, her as a human, she is so inspiring and she intrigues me so much because that was essentially just a side quest that took a fair few years of her life. She put on the back burner her true dream, which was going to space, in order to do all that advocacy work. But she has been announced as the first Vietnamese woman that will go to space. So she has done some amazing, amazing things so far, and I'm really intrigued to read this memoir and hear it, not just from the interviews I've watched and the podcasts I've listened to, but see how she writes her own story. Arguably, this is my most anticipated read of the year. At number 7, we have Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is out March 18th, I believe. You must be living under a rock if you haven't heard about Sunrise on the Reaping. So this is another book in the Hunger Games kind of world, although this one is set before the Hunger Games, but after Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So this is at the second quarter quell, or the 50th Games, which for those of you who know is Haymitch's Games. Haymitch's Games had twice the usual amount of tributes in it because it was a quarter quell, and knowing Haymitch's behavior in the Hunger Games trilogy, the core trilogy, and his drunken ways, that speaks both to the trauma response of having to live with winning the games where there was double the amount of tributes, and then also being District 12's only victor until Katniss and Peter's games 24 years later. So he is the sole mentor for over 2 decades of tributes who each and every year he's sending off to the slaughter. Now, we don't actually know how much this book focuses on those games. We don't know whether it's all about those games or whether those games are just the context for other things that happen throughout the novel, but I'm really intrigued to see what perspective we have within this one. And famously, Suzanne Collins always said she wouldn't continue to write the Hunger Games unless she had something to say. And let's just say the world as it is at the minute, I'm sure she has a lot to say. Book number 8 is Back in the Day by Oliver Lavrensky, out on the 17th of April. So I believe this book was originally published in Norwegian, and it's the English translation that is coming out this year. So from what I can gather, this book is about 2 men who perhaps are victims of circumstance, and one is dreaming of getting out, of living a better life, of bettering his future, but he keeps being dragged back into this world he knows. And I anticipate this is going to be quite a tragic story of hopes and potentially loss as well. And I think this one is really going to play on my heartstrings a little bit, but also potentially have some really interesting social commentary involved. Book number 9 is Favorite Daughter by Morgan Dick, which is out the 1st of May. So this book is about 2 half-sisters who I believe don't actually know each other in the beginning. One of these sisters had their father walk out on her to join his new family, and I believe the other sister is from that new family. The one who was walked out on holds resentment towards her father, and the one from the new family admires her father and is mourning his death quite deeply. That resentment that the first daughter is holding isn't enough to stop her from attending the mandated therapy she has to go to in order to receive her inheritance. And it's at this therapy that she meets her half-sister, who I believe is the therapist. And yes, there's ethical issues with that, but I believe this is going to explore their relationship as sisters and their differing relationships that they have to their father. I'm quite intrigued about how the dynamic between these two is going to play out and how they reconcile 2 very different versions of their father, which they've both experienced. And book number 10, which is the last of the new releases, is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is out the 3rd of June. We are indeed getting a new Taylor Jenkins Reid this year. This one is all about spaceflight and candidates who are training to be astronauts. That's kind of all I know. In general, I find Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing style quite captivating, and I don't think she shies away from writing potentially unlikable characters, which I quite enjoy, especially as strong female characters who don't desire to be liked. Although I will say, one of the major things that sometimes puts me off buying Taylor Jenkins Reid's books is the covers. This is not a great cover, and it is a vain reason to put off buying a book. But I have felt this about this cover. I felt it about the Evelyn Hugo cover because I don't like that cover either. And I also felt it about some of the Carrie Soto covers. But we'll move past it. We can overlook it. I did for the others. So the rest of this book, the next 15 books, are all books that are sat on my TBR and that have already come out. So book number 11 is A Little Life by Hannah Yanagihara. This, I don't believe, is a book you read for pleasure, and I don't think it's necessarily a book you enjoy, but it is an emotional gut punch. And from what I know, it also engages with some really important topics. So this is one that follows 4 graduates who are just moving to New York, and I believe it follows them through a substantive amount of their lives. So we follow them through aspirations, ambitions, successes, failures, whilst also uncovering stories of addiction and trauma. This is a heavy book, I know that, and it's one that personally I will not be able to pick up lightly, and I don't think it's one that I can just go, I'm going to dip in and out of this amongst doing other things. I need to sit down and dedicate time to it and really process the writing itself. I also know I need to put effort into being in the right headspace for it and knowing when to walk away from it, because I've seen this book wreck people. I've watched people do reading vlogs of this book and they cry more than they don't. And that is an emotionally taxing activity to read this book. With that being said, I do still want to read it because I think I'm going to find a lot of literary merit in this one. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a literature graduate. I'm trained to critically engage with literature, and I think there will be a lot of merit and a lot to gain from doing so with this book. I just have to prepare for it first. So book number 12 is A Man Called Ove? I can never quite get that right, but it's by Frederick Backman, and I believe there's now a film with Tom Hanks that might actually be called A Man Called Otto, so an anglicized version of it, but I believe this is a Swedish writer originally. I'm not sure whether it's a Swedish writer that writes in English or a Swedish writer that's been translated. I know I'm late to the game with this book, okay? I know I am. But I will be honest, it's the trailer for the movie that convinced me to read this one. I don't think the synopsis of this ever really gave me a true feel of what it was about. And I think the trailer for the movie actually did that slightly better, but I can't watch the movie until I've read the book because that's a rule I have for myself. So this one I am eager to get to. I've heard this described as both charming and heartwarming and also heartbreaking. So not quite sure how to feel about that going in, but from what I know, it's about quite a grumpy and pessimistic man who I think is kind of losing a bit of hope, and it kind of explores his relationships with those around him, his neighbors, people who keep kind of interjecting themselves into his life and understanding aspects of community, that kind of thing. I'm kind of speculating that we might get some interesting narratives surrounding interiority and personhood a little bit in here as well. I will say I'm kind of sad that I keep seeing the movie tie-in cover everywhere and not the original cover I saw, because that was beautiful and I don't like movie tie-in covers. Book number 13 is The Grandest Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I actually think book 2 in this series is coming out this year, but I haven't read book 1, so we're just focusing on book 1. Like I said, this is going to be a series, but it's a series that's kind of a follow-on series, if you will, from the Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So The Grandest Game is a competition held by Avery and the Hawthorne brothers from the Inheritance Games. So obviously we're going to get some of those very Hawthorne-esque puzzles and riddles, which I always think are really well written in the Inheritance Games. So we have 3 competitors. That includes Gigi, who's Grayson's half-sister that we met in the Brothers Hawthorne. Rohan is essentially playing because he has nothing else to lose and wants to create a future for himself. And Lyra, who may or may not be looking for answers to her father's death. I love The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I find Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing really captivating. I actually read another series by the author when I was probably about 10 that I flew through as well. So the writing style is one I'm really compatible with. And I also think the storylines are strung together in an interesting and complex way that is engaging to read about. So I'm really looking forward to continue being in kind of the Inheritance Games universe, but with a new focus. Now, talking of Jennifer Lynn Barnes, I also want to read the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, I know this is actually a series I'm putting here rather than just a book, but this is about a group of teenagers who are recruited into the Naturals program by the FBI because they each have a unique skill set. And amongst uncovering cases, I think we're also looking at the cost of those kind of gifts that they each have. It's giving YA Criminal Minds to me, and I'm incredibly excited about that. For number 15, we've got You'd Be Home Now by Kathleen Glasgow. We're sticking with YA for a little while here. Now, I could actually have put any of Kathleen Glasgow's books in this spot. I just think this might be the one I start with. I'm really interested by this author's work. The topics explored, usually covering social issues and mental health, are really intriguing to me, and I think if done well, are very important to cover in YA fiction. But doing them well is the tricky part. You don't want that representation to happen in a negative light that means people are more likely to stereotype or hold biases. So I'm really intrigued to see how Kathleen Glasgow as an author approaches these topics. You'd Be Home Now specifically, I believe, looks at the after effects of a car accident that exposes the drug addiction of the main character's brother. It's exploring the effects of the opioid crisis on young people. It's looking at personhood and family dynamics and trying to create your own identity and place in society as a teenager. So I think it sits at an intersection where this book and this author in general has the potential to do really great things. I just hope that they are depicted well. Book number 16 is Old Enough by Haley Jacobson. I'll be honest, this is one I found through seeing the author making TikToks about it, and the first draw to it for me was the fact that it focuses on a bisexual character. So from what I know, this is a story about college-age people, and it's exploring queer relationships, identity, and community. And from what I know, it also explores themes of what it means to be a sexual assault survivor. Essentially, I don't know loads about this book, but the cover looks gorgeous. I mean, look at it. The bits I have seen online about this book have really pulled me in, so I want to get to this one. Maybe it will be a Pride Month read. Pride Month is also my birthday month, so we really go all out in June. Book number 17 is Bunny by Mona Awad. I know I've not read Mona Awad. I've not read Bunny. It's a travesty, truly, and I know I'm late to the game. Okay, it's why it's on this list. So from what I know, this is dark academia vibes, but it's focused on female relationships, which really intrigues me. When it comes to around September, October time, I always get into my dark academia reads and really try and get in the kind of vibes of the season. So this is one I'm guessing I'm going to pick up around that time of the year. Number 18 is All Them Friends by Lulu Moore. Now, if you couldn't guess by the pun in the title, which I am very excited about, this is about rowing. We have two rivals. She rows for Cambridge, he rows for Oxford, and I believe it features at some point the boat race between those two universities every year. Now, for those of you who know about Oxford and Cambridge, the rivalry between those two universities is strong, and I'm guessing these two fall in love. So exploring that rivalry, exploring that setting is really interesting to me. Seeing what these characters are like is going to be interesting to me, and also just as a university student in the UK, something set in Oxford and Cambridge really intrigues me. I am an Oxbridge reject, so anything I can get to get close, anything. I'm joking, I'm over it now. I love Durham, I love St Andrews. I wouldn't change my experience for the world. Book number 19 is The Transgender Issue by Sean Fay. Now, this is one that has been on my TBR for a very, very long time, and I have a copy of it, and I keep meaning to pick it up. But nonfiction takes me longer to read than fiction, so I really have to dedicate time to nonfiction. And when I'm reading for my course, I'm studying gender studies anyway, so whilst it would be relevant, it can also mean that essentially the part of my brain that's being used on course reading all the time gets really tired and sometimes finds it hard to focus on nonfiction books alongside my course reading. So hopefully at some point this year I can fit this one in, because I do think it's a really important one to read, and I've seen a lot of people recommend it, especially with the current political climate. Book number 20 is The Other Ones by Fran Hart, and from what I know, this is a Halloween spooky season queer romance. I'm sold, that's all I need to know. It's YA, I think it's going to be really cute, and I'm definitely going to pick this one up in October because cute Halloween is what I do. I don't do scary Halloween. At number 21, we have the Books of Tommen series by Chloe Walsh. Again, I know this is a series, but I think I'm going to really love this series. I've seen it on TikTok quite a lot, and I've read little snippets of it. I know the first 2 books are focused on Johnny and Shannon, the next 2 are Joey and Aoife, and then the 5th book, which I believe is the last book out currently, is Gibbsy and Claire. I know I have to read Johnny and Shannon first, but from the snippets I've seen, I think Joey's books are going to be the ones that emotionally destroy me. And this is a book series that I believe deals with social issues. So I'm really fond of books that intertwine really grounded elements of story into these characters and into these relationships. From what I've heard, those topics range from sex and intimacy to drug abuse and domestic abuse, and also academic and social pressures, uncertainty about the future. There's a lot that's covered in these books. Now, the one thing that intimidates me is the size of them. Have you seen how thick these books are? I have big book fear. The only time I've read really, really thick books is when I've had to for my degree before. And even then, we had to read a lot of books, so largely they gave us short books. But you never know. This might be the series to change me. At 22, we have Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. I've heard so many people talk about this book, and I believe it covers a really important conversation surrounding trans identity, personhood, parenthood, and also family dynamics. From what I know about it, it also touches a little bit on the implications and repercussions of hate crime for trans individuals, because one of the characters, I believe, detransitions as a result of being attacked on the street. So obviously this book is touching on the social climate for trans people at the moment, which again, super important, just like I said, for the transgender issue. And I'm just really interested to see how this book is written and what's explored in the pages. At 23, we have Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. I have seen everyone talk about this on TikTok. Even people who have said they put off reading it because they thought it might be overhyped have then come on TikTok and hyped it up. So I feel like I definitely need to read this. I don't really know a lot about it, other than the fact that I believe it's a college sports romance. That's kind of all I know. But people are saying it emotionally destroyed them, saying you have to read it, saying all of these things. So I just want to hop on the bandwagon. Although the thing that's confusing me is some people are saying this is the first in a series. Some people are saying that it is, but it's also connected to a previous series by the same author, so you have to read that one first. So I don't really know how that works. I need to do more research and figure out whether I can just read Say You Swear first, or whether there's books before it that I should read. 24, we have Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the first book in the Addicted series, but the reason I'm not putting the whole series on this time is because it's a long series. I actually don't know loads about the whole series. I've only really ever heard about this book. So we'll see how we feel. From what I know, we follow 2 best friends, Lily and Lo, who have been pretending to be dating for years, but in actual fact, they've kind of been enabling each other in their mutual self-destruction. So Lily is a sex addict, and then Lo is an alcoholic, I believe. And I guess it kind of explores their friendship, relationship, and also their kind of vices and how they're enabling each other as well. And then we get to 25, which is the final book on this list, and that's If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nowlin. From what I know, this is a complex and heartbreaking YA novel, and again, it covers some of those really important social topics and issues. All I really know in terms of the characters is these are 2 characters who used to be like best friends and now they avoid each other. And what I'm guessing is maybe we explore what actually happened between them, and then there's some kind of reconciliation. I don't really know. From what I can garner online, there are themes surrounding mental health and sexual assault in here explored as well. So I don't really know what the plot of this one is, but the aspects that I do know about this novel suggest it's going to be one that, if done well, is definitely going to emotionally destroy me, but could be a really important kind of book to exist. Like I've said before, I enjoy books, especially romance books, that have this kind of grounded element that feel raw and like they're actually dealing with real issues that people have in relationships and accompanying the romance occurring in their own lives. So that brings us to the end of the 25 books I want to read in 2025. Now, if you've read any of these and think there's one that I should prioritize, if you recommend reading one specifically, or if there's other books by similar authors or based on some of the things I've said about what I like to read that you'd recommend, put all of that down in the comments. I honestly am just reading by vibes at the minute, so I'm going to pick and choose from this list whatever feels kind of like the thing I want to read next. So if you do think there's something that should be high on my priority list, let me know. And I generally review things over on my TikTok. When I finished a book or a series, I will post a review on my TikTok. I try to keep them under like 2 minutes long, try to be quite quick and snappy. And also, I know there are definitely going to be books released the second half of this year that I don't know about yet, that I'm going to be kicking myself at the end of the year for not putting on this list. But as I said, come the end of the year, we will recap this list. We will see what I did and didn't read, and I will give reviews for the things that I did read. Hopefully, we can get as much of this list done as possible, because these are the books I'm really dedicated to getting through this year. There's only so many times you can see a book you want to read and pass over it. So this is the year that we stop passing over books. I would say this is so I can also deplete my physical TBR, but the issue with that is I keep buying books. As we like to say, book buying and book reading, two separate hobbies. I've rambled enough, so I'm going to let you go now, but we'll regroup at the end of the year for this.